Alright guys, welcome back to Turbo's Toy Box. Today we're going to play with a 2004 Toyota 4Runner. My buddy Chris picked up and decided that he'd like to make a little more stylish, a little more fun daily driver out of it, and maybe make the ride a little better. It's got 180 some thousand miles on it, and appears to still have all the stock suspension under it. So he's picked up some Bilstein 5100 shocks and struts, and then he's got some coil spring spacers for the back. So we're gonna add those coil spring spacers in the back of it, along with the Bilstein struts, and the 5100 series that he picked up has the adjustable spring perch, so that depending on which setting you have, you can adjust for the amount of lift you want in the front. From stock, I think there's 4 increments up to the maximum of 2.5 inches, which is what he's decided that we're going to go with on this. So we got a 2.5 inch lift for the front, 2 inch for the back. Should give the truck kind of a nice level stance and make room for a little bit meatier tires. So guess let's get to work, huh? All right, so as opposed to the the brand new Tacoma that I worked on the other day, this apparently those bushings and the cam adjustment bolts that are for setting the alignment are seized in these lower control arms. So I'm having to pry on that control arm to try and get it down far enough so that I can get that strut out. This is where the job is going to get a little bit more difficult. So not sure exactly what I'm going to do. I might have to go procure an extra set of hands from my wife or daughter to help me with this, or see if I can get somebody to come over, but we're still under quarantine, so I don't know. Could be dangerous, I mean, we'll see what the safest way to do it is. We may not be able to record it, for security purposes. All right, so a couple of minutes of pondering. I think that what I'm going to do is tear apart the passenger side of the vehicle, and then once I have both sides apart, I can drop that sway bar out of the way, and I think with the sway bar out of the way, that strut will have clearance to come out between the tie rod and the lower control arm. So we're going to give a shot at that direction and see how that works out for us. All right, we've had some success. We've got struts out. Both of them have been removed. So now we get on to the part that most people think is really sketchy, because it really is. We got some coil spring compressors. We got to compress those coils, remove them from the original strut, swap them over to the new Bilstein strut. Okay, so I ended up going and visiting my buddy's shop. He's got a wall-mounted strut compressor. We were able to stick these in there and swap them over. Definitely the safest way to do it. I would have tried to do it myself, but I think I loaned out my strut compressor, spring compressors at some point, and I don't know who I loaned them to or where they went. I searched high and low, couldn't find them, so I'm in the process of starting to put them back in here and see if we can get this front suspension put back together, guys. The front's all done, put together, if you caught it, but same as the Tacoma, I had loosened the control arm bolts, and then once the vehicle is sitting on the ground, then retighten the control arm bolts to reset those bushings. We'll see if we have the same luck in the rear. So jack the rear up, get it on some stands, and drop out the shocks, probably disconnect some sway bar links, and then try to flex the axle far enough to get the coil spring spacers in there. Put some new shocks on and enjoy the new lifted ride height and new shocks. Hopefully it'll ride decent. So plugging away. All right, so if you watch the video closely, you can see I've gone through, did the same thing that I normally do. I've loosened all of the control arms and the track bar for the back, loosened all those bolts up so the bushings will reset to their new position once we have the truck lifted, and then I'll tighten them once the weight of the suspension's back in place. Got the shock off. And then also I took the rear sway bar off. Now, blocking the camera too much here, but so the rear sway bar bolts to the axle with a couple of bolts, right? You can see my hand in here. Anyway, a couple of bolts on the front side of the axle underneath here. I went ahead, removed those bolts on both sides. Drop the sway bar free of the axle. That'll allow the axle to articulate side to side a lot easier when we're trying to get these springs into place. So hopefully that means we can kind of lower this jack. The axle is going to drop down nice and far. Probably going to go ahead and unbolt the rubber brake hoses from the axle housing because I don't want to hyperextend those. So we'll do that and then lower the jack. Try to get these spacers in place underneath the coil spring. So. All right, that's how it's done, I guess. So we did the same, reset all the bushings, tightened them. As you notice with the jack under it, which I had all the weight on the suspension, the weight of the vehicle was on the suspension, the jack stands were barely touching at that point. I kind of grabbed the one, I don't know if you caught that, but grabbed the one, made sure I didn't really have any load on the jack stands at all, so all the weight was on the suspension of the truck. Went through and tightened all those control arm and track bar bushings so that they're all kind of reset to zero so that we're not going to be wearing them out prematurely. And got the wheels all bolted back on. I did have a bit of an issue with the upper bushings on the rear shock. So the two bushings that Bilstein supplies, if you put them on the shock by itself with the washers, there isn't even any thread there to get the nut started. And once you put it in the car, Then you've got the additional thickness of the frame mount on the car itself, which makes the problem even worse. So what I ended up having to do, and you know, I don't know, against the grain or what, but I mean, it was the only thing I could figure out, is I took my razor knife, pocket knife, and I cut about 1/8 of an inch off of the bushing on the top side, which was just enough for the thickness of the washer, and then I could push down on it just enough to get that first thread started. And of course, once you get that first thread started, you're able to tighten the nut up with a wrench, and you know, it worked out good. So see if we can get kind of an after profile, but there it is. So I'll back it outside and get some after pics here, but I think it turned out really good. Hopefully Chris is happy and he can get the alignment done on it. And another Toyota bombing around Traverse City area looking tough.